Good morning. Today we're going to do something a little more complex looking, but just as simple as the designs we've already done. So, we're going to model a curved leg stool. Not that the legs are totally curved, but that they have a curve at the top and they're angled out with a round seat. I think it's a cute look. It's really easy to build, and we're going to get right into it. So we have a basic installation of Fusion 360. No plugins, no extra stuff, just what you get when you sign up either for education or the hobbyist user version. Now if we click over here, right-click on the cube and make sure we are modeling with perspective with ortho faces. You can play around with those and see what you like, but I find this so much more natural. The other thing I'm going to do is, because I promised some of the people who are watching today I would model this in Imperial Measurements, we're going to model it in inches. But please cut me some slack, because this is not a language I speak naturally, being a metric user from early childhood. So we're going to start off with this by modeling, create a new sketch on the front, and we're going to model the leg. We're going to model half the leg. And we're first going to start by creating a boundary box so we have an idea of where the leg has to fit. We're just going to create a rectangle. Now, as usual, I don't care how big that rectangle is. We're going to give it some constraint dimensions. So I get out of the rectangle tool by hitting Escape. I start the dimensioning tool. I can hit D or just click on it up here in the Create menu. And I'm going to say that the stool, if it's going to be, let's say 31 inches tall, typical bar stool, and the seat is going to be 1.5 inches, that means it is going to be 29.5 inches. So I'll just type it in and hit Enter. 29.5 inches tall. I'll zoom up by rotating the middle mouse button back. And I'm going to say that if the stool is going to be 16 inches wide in terms of the top, and I want the legs to stick out a little bit beyond that. Let's say we want them to stick out 2 inches. So we'll say it's 20 inches wide. That means that this boundary will be 10 inches from the middle to the side. Okay? Now, if I double-click on the line here, if I click on the line once, it'll select the line. If I double-click, it'll select the whole box. And I will hit X to turn this into a guide. This is just a reference box. It isn't actually going to define any of the pieces we make. It's just going to give us the outside dimensions of what we're going to model to. Now, in the case of this leg, we're going to start off by drawing a couple of angled lines up. An angled line up, and a straight line over. Then an angled line back down again, and a straight line over. Click, and you're done. We're going to go up here and draw a box from the center origin over, and that box will be right there. Now we're going to connect those with 2 curves. Click our Arc tool from the outside top to the outside edge, and from the inside top to the inside edge. And now I want to make sure that those line up properly. So I'm going to click Tangent, and I want to make sure we have one tangent that's been automatically created. We want to have a tangent between the inside edge and its curve, and the inside curve and the top edge. And you see what it's managed to do there? Let's see if we can get that to work a bit better. We'll undo, and we will drag this up so that the curve is much, much closer to where it's supposed to be. We actually want this to be a very flowing curve. So before you stick in any constraints, try to get it close visually, because that means it's not going to do something unpredictable. So if we click Tangent again now, we click on the tangent, the inside curve, and the leg. The outside curve and the leg. Well, not the leg, the center piece. And you can now see it hasn't gone all over the place. So if you click on Constraints and things start to go haywire on you, the first thing you should think is, am I asking it to do something that I hadn't already vaguely sketched out pretty close already, because often it's going to have to take a guess which version of the constraint you want. And it's so much easier to get it close first. You don't have to. You can work with it and let it go all over the place and then try to drag stuff back to where it's supposed to be and add more constraints and dimensions, but it's much easier to just get it right the first time. Now, I want to make sure that all of this is done with the same size stock. So I'm going to give it a dimension. I will go up here and say dimension, and from this line to this line, oh, look at that. That's an arc. I haven't made them parallel yet. That is the mistake everybody makes when they try to get dimensions between lines. They have to be parallel or you're actually going to dimension in degrees, which is really going to throw stuff off. If you type in you want 4 inches and it's going to be 4 degrees, well, you might not notice that until a bit later. So let's click on parallel, and between these two lines here, it's going to be parallel. Then we go to dimension, and you'll see the difference from what we just had. I click on one, then the other, and we're going to make this 3/4 of an inch. Well, that's tipped us down a little bit, but that's not a real problem. We can just drag it back by clicking on any point on the lines and dragging the thing back to where it's supposed to be. Now, I want to make sure that everything is in its right place. Well, how big a curve do I want? That actually looks pretty good in terms of a curve, but I don't know how big a curve that actually is. So I want to make a determination between the top of the base and the bottom of the curve. It thinks that's 3 inches. I think I'm actually going to make that 4 inches and make it a little more curvy. And proportionally speaking, 3/4 is a bit thin. So we're going to go in here. To change a dimension, you just double click on it, and I'm going to make it 7/8. And because that is all tangent, those are actually going to mirror right through. All this is now going to be 7/8. Now the only other thing that we have to be careful of is we haven't given an angle for this leg. So I'm going to still have the dimension tool on. The angle between that leg and the base is going to be 85 degrees. In other words, 5 degrees off 90. And you can now see that instead of blue, all of our lines are black. So that is our fully defined sketch. And that means we can finish up with our sketch. Look, we've only got 3 measurements and an angle, plus our boundary box, to make a curved leg. Curves really don't make things all that much more complicated. We have a 4-inch radius curve up here. Now, I click Finish Sketch, and you can see, if I hold down Shift and drag with the middle mouse button, I can rotate around, and if I just drag with the middle mouse button, I can zoom. I can drag around the sketch. So let's make that 3-dimensional. I am going to click on the Extrude tool. I'm going to pick the 3 parts of our base that we have. Remember, this is only one side of the base, but that is okay. And I want it to expand in both directions symmetrically, and it is going to be 1 1/4 thick. So how far do I want to go to make it 1 1/4? I want to go 5/8 in each direction, and we will say New Component. Okay, so if we now look at this, we have a curved base. Well, we have 1/4 of a curved base. And there are several ways that we can do this, but what I'm actually going to look at doing is creating a mirror. If I click on this mirror tool, and I make sure we select bodies, click on this body, and then hit Mirror Pane. If we mirror across the axis by clicking on the axis, we now have this operation join, and we're going to join that together, and we have made our curve base. We only had to model one side of it. But it actually gets even better than that. If I go up here and say I want to construct a plane at an angle, and I choose this center, and I rotate 45 degrees, and say OK. Now, if I mirror this whole body across that 45 degrees, the 45 degrees in the mirror is going to make our whole thing turn 90 degrees. And we're going to say, I want a new body. We're not going to join them, because in a minute, we're going to half lap these two joints. And we're going to say, OK. So now we have the base. Oh, look at that. We've done everything to make the base. We're going to put a little stretcher on the bottom of this in a minute. But first, let's make our top. We're going to make a round top, and we're going to half lap the bottom and put in some supports to attach to the top. So how do we do the top? We're going to create another sketch, but instead of on the side, we're going to create a sketch on the bottom. Now, we already know where the middle is, so I'm just going to take a circle, start at the middle, and draw out. I know how big a circle I want, so I will hit Dimension, click on the circle, and I want it to be 16 inches. We're going to see how that looks on our stool in a second. If we say Finish Sketch, I'm going to click on Extrude, the top, and we will make it 1 1/2 inches. Change Join to New Component, and say OK. Now, we have a nice round top that is 1 1/2 inches thick. That's quite a solid top. But what I think we'd like to do is take that curved top and cut a little recess into it for the backside. Now, there are two ways that we can do that. One is we can dip the middle, and the other is we can have an actual cutout in the middle. Now, I think having an actual cutout in the middle is going to be much nicer than just dipping the middle in as if it was cut out by a rudimentary machine. So we're going to say New Sketch, and we're going to sketch right here on the front. If I click on the, if I hit P for project, which means grab the dimensions of something. I don't know why it's called project, honestly. But if I grab the dimensions of this stool, top, and I say OK, we now have all the dimensions so we can see where we want to make our curve. I would like to create a curve, Arc Tool, from one part of the seat to another part of the seat, and somewhere in the middle, we're going to have a little dip. So if I go in and I look at this, we now have an arc. And because I clicked right in the middle, the arc is going to be parallel. The only thing I have to do now is draw a little guideline from one side to the other. Oh, no, I don't need to draw it from one side to the other. I'm going to draw it from the top to the arc. Now that doesn't look very straight, but I don't care, because I can click on it and I can click on horizontal and vertical, and now it's a straight line. If I hit Dimension and click on that line, I can tell it how deep I want this to be, and I'm going to say it's going to be a 5/8 inch curve. Now there's one other dimension that I need. I need to know how wide I want it to be. So from the center out to the edge of our curve, I think I want it to be about 6.5 inches. And now it's black. So we hit Finish Sketch. And I am going to say Extrude. I'm going to have to open up that component and hide the body because the curve is right in the middle of it. Let's select the two pieces of our curve, turn the body back on, and say we are going to cut. We are going to cut in both directions. Oops, one side, symmetrical. We're going to cut in both dimensions, and it doesn't matter how far we cut, because there's nothing else out there. So let's just cut 10 inches in both directions, and make sure that it cuts. OK? And now we have a nice curve in our stool. Seems good to me. It's not the prettiest curve, and you can refine that later, but we're going to do something else to make sure that that is even nicer. What I'm going to do is, I will say modify, and I'm going to fillet, or create a roundover, on all the outside edges of this seat. And if I make that 1/4 inch and say OK, we now have a very rounded profile. I'd like to repeat that command one more time. Repeat fillet. I right-click on the back, and instead of it being on the outside, I'm going to make a 1/2 inch roundover on the inside arc and say OK. And now it looks much smoother. That looks like something that could be actually comfy to sit on. Whether you want that to be in line with the legs or in between the legs, totally up to you. I think it looks interesting in line with the leg, so I'm going to keep it that way. You could rotate that top, turn it 45 degrees, and have this in line with the center instead, but I think it actually looks better this way. I'll leave it to you. If you want to make a comment down below and let me know whether you think it looks better this way or whether you think it would look better turned the other way, we can always discuss that. Now, the only other thing that I want to do with this stool is I want to create 2 stretchers that are crossing in the middle so that we can have a bit more strength down. Now, this stool, the way that it is, will actually hold up totally fine, but let's just make sure that we want to keep the thing sturdy for years to come. So I am going to click on New Sketch. I'm going to sketch on the right side of the thing, and I am going to go in to our first component, which is our legs, and I'm going to turn off one of the legs. I want to turn off the one in the middle. So now, if I hit P for project, which means I'm going to grab all the dimensions of this leg and hit OK. And that means that what I need to do is just draw 2 lines, one from here to here on the inside, and another parallel to it on the inside as well. And I'm going to give 2 dimensions. Dimension between these 2 lines is going to be 1 5/8 inches thick, which is going to be a really nice beefy stretcher. And we'll see if that looks okay. We might have to come back and thin it up. I think we will, but this is the thickness of quite a lot of stretchers that you see on these types of stools. And the other dimension we need is how far up from the bottom. So from the bottom of the stretcher to the bottom of the stool, and we're going to make it 7 inches. And we will play with this and see how we like it later. So if I say Finish Sketch, and I click Extrude, and I click on the stretcher, I want the stretcher to be exactly the same thickness and positioning as this leg. So if I go up here, and I say I want it to start at not the profile plane, but the object. I want it to start at the inside of this leg. And extent type, that's how far do we go, to object. I'm going to rotate around and go all the way to the other side and select the other side of this leg. Now, I don't want it to join. I want it to make a new component and say OK, because I want them to stay separate. Now, I think that looks pretty good, but it's a little low. So let's go down here to our history line. We're going to edit this. So if I look at it, it says, there we go, Sketch 4. So if I open up my Sketch panel, and I right-click on Sketch 4 and hit Edit Sketch, we're going to change 7 inches to 8.5. And I think I'm going to change this to 1 3/8. We'll say Finish Sketch, and now it's moved it up and made it a little thinner. I think that looks so much nicer, don't you? Now, if I turn back on the other body, it doesn't have a stretcher yet. So what are we going to do about that stretcher? We're going to click on this mirror, that stretcher, create it across this mirrored pane. And remember, we created this angled mirrored pane before. If I click on that and say New Body, hit OK, we now have a stretcher that goes right all the way across. Now, we've finished modeling our actual design. If you wanted just to see what it was going to look like, this would be all you need to do. But there are a few other things that we need to do if we're going to see how to make it in real life. And because we are woodworkers, we actually want to make the thing in real life. So let's be a bit more organized. I'm going to rename this component by double-clicking on it, and I'm going to call it Legs. I'm going to rename the next one, and this one is Seat. And the third one, we're going to call Stretchers. Now, those stretchers are going to have to join into those legs. And I think the best way to do that is going to be to have a couple of dowels. You could do it with integrated tenons and mortises. Well, mortises and tenons usually is what we say. But I think we're going to do this the simple way. We're going to have some dowels, and we're going to connect the seat to the base with dowels as well. The only thing that we're going to do that is not doweled is we're going to have some half laps for the for the base, right below the seat, up here. And we're going to have some half laps for these to join them together. Now, what does a half lap actually look like? It looks like half the board is cut away on one and half the board is cut away on the other. So we're going to do that cut in one, and then we're going to cut the piece that's left out of the other. So in our stretchers, we're going to open the stretchers folder and look at the bodies. We're going to hide body 2, create a new sketch on this body 1. We want to get the dimensions of this outside leg to know how wide things are. So P for project, click on that and hit OK. And now we can go ahead and hide the legs, get them out of our way too. So all I want to do is draw a line straight down the middle. See this midpoint here, this triangle, the middle to the middle, and hit Finish Sketch. It really is that simple. And now, if I say extrude, I'm going to pick just the top half, distance to object, go from one side to the other, cut, OK. So we've now cut half our half lap. Imagine if it was that fast with the table saw. We're going to turn the other body back on, and if we turn the first one off, you can see it doesn't have a hole in it yet. But we just want that hole to fit exactly what we did on the other one. So I'm going to click up here on Modify, Combine, and I'm going to cut this piece with the other piece and make sure we keep the tools. And hit OK. So if I turn the first one off, you can see the second one has a hole in the bottom. If I turn the second one off, the first one has a hole in the top. We now have our half lap, and we'll turn the legs back on. Now if we go up here, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We'll get rid of the seat just so that we don't get anything in the way. We're going to rotate around and create a sketch on the side of one of our legs. Now I'm going to hide the other leg, go in here closer with the zoom in, and I will draw a line. Where is the edge of this piece? Up here somewhere. And I need to find the center point. All right, okay, now I see where the edge is. Oh, right, the edge isn't actually there. I need to draw a little line from the top to the bottom. And that will allow me to figure out where the center point is. From the center there, you can see that center triangle now, we're going to draw a cross. And it doesn't matter really how far across we go. We just need a dividing line. So anywhere there is totally okay. Now if we turn on the other leg and hit P for project, we'll get the width. Doesn't matter what part we have, we just need to have that width. And we already now have all the pieces we need. We will go up here and draw our rectangle, and it is going to be between those 4 points. Okay? We'll hit Finish Sketch and zoom in. If we turn off that first body, click on Extrude, and cut, just like we did on the straight piece, to the object on the other side, and hit OK, we now have our half lap cut. It doesn't matter that it's a curved piece. That's totally irrelevant to the thing because we're not even cutting on the curve. If we turn on the other body and do exactly the same thing, combine, and we're going to cut the one body we haven't cut with the body we have cut, and hit OK. And now you can see one has a hole in the top, one has a hole in the bottom, and they will slot totally fine into each other. So our stool base is complete except for a couple of dowels. Now, the important thing to remember is that we want these dowels to go in at an angle. We want it to go in, actually, at the angle that is perpendicular to the outside edge, which makes it really easy. So if I click on this new sketch, and I click on the outside edge, I want to be able to use the dimensions of this stretcher. So I will hit P for project, and I will click on this stretcher and hit OK. And it will grab those dimensions for me so I know where the top and the bottom of the stretcher are all the time. I will draw a line right down the middle of this piece so that I know where the middle is. And I'm going to click on that and hit X to make it just a guide so we don't split our dowels in half. Now I will click on this round tool, the circle tool, and I'm going to draw 2 circles. I want them to be the same size, so I'll click equals and click on one circle, then the other circle. I'm going to give them a dimension by clicking the dimension tool, and I want those to be 3/8 inch dowels. All right, now let's see where they're going to go. I think they are a bit high. Actually, where did we get this stretcher from? I think we might have got the wrong stretcher. But either way, we're going to do that again. P for project, and we're going to get this edge, rotate around, and we'll get the bottom, whoops, and the top of this stretcher. Okay, now we have an idea of where these dowels are supposed to go. I'm going to drag this one down and drag this one down. And I will say that I want from the top of that stretcher to the top, to the center of the dowel to be 1/8 of an inch. And I want the distance between the 2 dowels to be 3/4 of an inch. Now, we're going to see in a second if that's actually going to do what we need it to do. I think they might be a little far apart, and the first one might be a bit high. So let's make it 3/8 of an inch down from the top, but only 1/2 an inch between them. That looks more like it's going to work. If you're sketching and you're not sure where something is going to end up, rotate around and take a look at it. So let's say Finish Sketch. All right. I'm going to click on Extrude. Doesn't matter about all those extra dimensions. They don't really make any difference. I'll click on my 2 dowels. I'm going to say new component, and I want them to go in the other direction. This arrow, see, is pointing out that way. I want them to actually go into the piece. So I'm going to say I want them to be 3-inch dowels. But I'm going to make them negative. And they're going to go deep into that piece. They're going to go quite a bit deeper into that piece than you might think. Where are they now? If I hit OK, and I scroll down here, you can see this component is going really deep. Well, I think that's going to actually weaken it. So I'm going to right-click on the extrude, say Edit Feature, and change those to be 2-inch long dowels. They also look a bit horsey. So I'm going to edit that sketch. And instead of making them 3/8-inch dowels, I'm going to make them 1/4-inch dowels. Whoops, that's not the 1/4-inch. I made them 1/2-inch dowels, didn't I? Whoops, my mistake. 1/4-inch dowels. And now we have 2 1/4-inch dowels right there on the end. Now, we're going to need those on each corner here, which is not too difficult to make happen. We're going to use a tool that we haven't used before. I will say Create Pattern, Circular Pattern. Select Bodies, and we will click on each of those 2 dowels. Then we say Axis, and we're going to rotate them around the middle. Now it says we're going to have 3 of them, and you can see it's putting them out there. Well, if I say 4, now it's going to space them evenly around that center point. There are some other ways to do this, but this is definitely the fastest. So I just hit OK. And now I have dowels on each side. Those dowels are not actually making holes yet, but we're definitely on our way. I'll rename this component to Stretcher Dowels. And I'm going to open it up, and we should have 8 bodies. And you can see where they are. They're holding the whole thing together right there. Now, if I want to actually make the holes into this base, we've already done this. We've done it exactly the same way, making the holes for the half-lap joints. So I will say Combine, and I'm going to combine one leg. If I click on the first body and hold Shift and click on the last one, I'm going to cut it with all of them and hit OK. I'll right-click on the background and hit Combine, and I'll do the same thing for the other leg. Now remember, we have to do this for the other pieces the dowels are going to run into as well. So we'll do it for the first of the stretchers, and then we'll do it for the second of the stretchers. Now, this is sort of hidden joinery here, so let's make it a little more obvious. I'm going to hit A for Appearance, and I'm going to scroll down to our woods, and I'm going to use a contrasting wood for all these dowels. I don't know if I'd do this in real life, but it'll make it really obvious. If this isn't available, by the way, if there's a little download icon here, you might have to hit that. I'm told that sometimes they're not downloaded in the basic installation. When I installed this, I got all the woods. Some of the weird stuff didn't show up, but the woods did. But if it didn't for you, just hit download and you can get your nice glossy walnut. And if we go in here and look, we now have these dowels holding this piece in place. And that's pretty good. While we're at it, we might want to think about actually using an accent wood for those stretchers, but we can always come back to that. Let's go up here. We'll close out of this panel, and we're going to see how to attach the top to the base. Well, I think we should attach the top to the base with another few dowels. So I'm going to click on Sketch, and I'm going to sketch on the top. I also want to be able to put them right in the middle, and we're going to make them symmetrical. We're going to use 5 small dowels to put the top on. So I will click on this circle, start right from the middle, and draw the circle. We're going to hit Dimension, click on it, and we're going to make it a 3/8 inch dowel. Not too bad. That 3/8 inch dowel looks awfully small in comparison. It was way too big down below. Now up here it's too small. So how do we edit it? We just double click on it. And we're going to make it a 1/2 inch dowel. Now I said we want 5. Well, yes, we definitely do want 5. But I'm not going to worry too much about the other ones. We're just going to get the first one started. So we'll hit Finish Sketch. We are going to say Extrude, that one. And it is going to go up and down. So from the top, we're going to go, we're going to go from the bottom of this leg. So we'll say from Object, bottom of the leg, and we're going to go up, and it will be a new component, and we will go up to the top of the leg, plus, how far into the top are we going to go? Well, we're going to go 1/4 of an inch. And hit OK. So it now sticks out 1/4 of an inch above, but it goes right from the bottom, and you can see it here. We haven't cut a hole for it yet, but it goes all the way through. Now, we're going to go up here and click our rectangular pattern, create rectangular pattern. We're going to click on this dowel and say direction. We're going to pick. We want to go up and left. Now it goes in one direction and then the other direction, but only one way by default. So we're going to change both of these to be symmetric. We want 3 of them, and we're going to change this to be spaced, so they are spaced exactly 2 inches apart. 2 inches that way and 2 inches this way. Now we've got 9. We don't need 9 because a bunch of them are floating out in space. So let's hit Suppress and turn off the ones we don't need. So now we have 5 of these dowels, and I'll hit OK. Wait a second. Where did they go? Edit feature. Yes. Oh, bodies. My mistake. One of these. Now we have it going in the right direction. I don't know why that defaulted to faces. I'm sorry, everybody. I forgot to check that it was duplicating the body. It was duplicating just the face of the drawing. That's why it didn't show up. All right. Apparently I'm not very awake yet, and it is almost 9 o'clock in the morning here where we're streaming this. So, yeah. Let's turn off that plane. We'll hide it for a second. If you go into construction, you can see all the extra planes. This is our 45-degree plane that we drew right at the beginning. Now, if we zoom out, we can see we have 5 dowels. What would I like to do with those? I'm going to cut those into the legs. So combine one leg, all 5. Combine the other leg, and all 5. Now if I look down at the bottom, we should now be able to see these. I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to use this walnut to accentuate them so you can see them more easily. Would I use walnut for this in real life? Well, maybe. It kind of looks cool. And I'm going to rename this to be seat dowels. Now the only thing we have to do now is turn on our seat. Looks good, right? Now, we have a question here of what we want to do with these in terms of letting them be seen. We have 2 choices that we can make. One is we can make them seen through the top and cut them off flush with the top of the seat, or we can keep them hidden. Which we're going to do is mostly going to depend on, well, aesthetics. I think they will look better if we actually have them come all the way through the seat. So I'm going to go back to where we had this extruded for the seat dowels. Remember we said that we were going to have them go up only 1/4 inch? Well, I'm going to make them go up 3 inches. and hit OK. Now they come all the way through the seat. Well, that doesn't look very good. Let's cut them off. So if I click on this Split Body tool, and I'm going to split all 5 of these bodies. Let's select our splitting tool, and I'm going to select the curved top face of this seat and hit OK. Now, if we look down here, we have 10 bodies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the ones that we have at the bottom, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are the 5 up above. So I'm just going to select the last 5, right-click, and hit Remove. And we've now got them cut off flush with the top of our seat. The only thing left to do before this stool is finished is drill out the holes in the seat dish for those dowels so that they will actually penetrate through and hold the seat on. So I'm going to say Combine, Seat, and I'm going to pick all 5 of those dowels, keep the tools, cut, and hit OK, and now we have our 5 dowels that go from the bottom all the way through the top of the seat and are held on. So there you have it. We have a nice little stool, bar stool, held together with dowels and half laps, and the seat is put on with, of course, dowels. It'll be glued in place too, and I think it's really nicely shaped, rounded. Yes, you could mold it to the bottom of your body, but I think this has a really nice modern look. So this might not be the perfect stool. I've created some really complicated ones, and we're going to model a few simpler ones as well in the next few classes. There's a basic shaker-style stool that I want to do with you, and a really simple 3-legged tapered stool, which I'm going to do fairly soon. But this one here is a great demonstration of how simple things like curves and round objects and dowel construction can be modeling in Fusion 360. So I hope you've enjoyed following along with me today. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and let your friends know. You can feel free to post this content on any of the online woodworking groups that you're a part of, or share it with your local guild. If you're not part of a woodworking guild, I highly recommend you join, and if there's anything that we can do for you, online classes, mentorship, and such, just get in contact with us here. So thank you for watching. I know these videos are sometimes a bit long in the live streams, but we try to go into as much detail as possible. So come back and join us again later for another live stream build in Fusion 360 as you develop your skills. Have a great day.